From the Belarusian opening up about the hostilities she's faced because of her nationality, to making a satisfying record-breaking win against her biggest rival, Iga Swiatek, here's what Aryna Sabalenka had to say about all the hate she received. Especially because it came from other players in the locker room. After Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Aryna admitted that she found it difficult to understand the hate that certain players had towards her. The world number 2 stated that she had nothing against Ukrainians personally and feels awful for them as Moscow's antics. You see, her country, Belarus, has served as an assembly point for the invasion, which Moscow refers to as a special military operation. But what does a player have to do with it? Before the Miami Open, Sabalenka admitted, "I've never felt that much animosity in the locker room. It was really challenging for me." When you're losing matches, there are a lot of people trolling you on social media, sending hate for no reason. But to experience it in the locker room, among fellow players, that's gotta be brutal. And that's not all. She revealed that there were also some very uncomfortable conversations among players, which she had nothing to do with. It wasn't exactly fights, just weird conversations with members from the other teams. And while she says it's gotten better now, she shudders to remember what a tough time it was. You see, there's a lot of tension going on in tennis because of the conflict. So Aryna isn't the only one feeling the heat. Since the conflict started, athletes from both countries have been categorized as neutral, but they've also been banned from Wimbledon last year. In fact, before the Miami Open kicked off, Sabalenka, who herself lost to Kazakhstan's Aryna Sabalenka in the Indian Wells Championship match, mentioned how Aryna Sabalenka of Ukraine withdrew from a match against her. We're talking about a match against the winner of the 2023 Australian Open, you guys. But then another news made headlines. How after speaking with Women's Tennis Association's CEO Steve Simon about the sport's response to Russia's invasion, Sabalenka experienced a panic attack. Around the same time, Anastasia Potapova of Russia received an official warning from the WTA at Indian Wells for donning a Spartak Moscow football shirt before her match with American Jessica Pegula. So much drama. In fact, there's been a very serious verbal tiff going on for some time, starring none other than Aryna's biggest rival, world number 1 Iga Swiatek. She demanded that tennis officials give Ukrainian players more help, since they weren't doing enough. But Belarus's Victoria Azarenka, a 2-time Grand Slam champion, shot back at her comments. You see, Swiatek feels that by not banning players from Russia and Belarus, tennis wasted an opportunity to make a strong statement to Moscow. In response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine last year, Wimbledon was the only Grand Slam to ban players. But then they announced that they'd now allow them as neutral athletes. Now, if you don't know, this whole thing was unprecedented in its own right. Because since the post-World War II era, when German and Japanese players were banned from tournaments, the 2022 ban was the first time tennis players were disqualified based on their nationality. That's still not good enough for the world number 1, huh? Well, Sabalenka feels strongly against that. The 25-year-old countered how it's not a player's fault that they have a certain passport. Their position is already shaky at times like these, and it's difficult for them to talk out loud about it. Probably referring to the fact that speaking against the government in Russia and ally states is punishable by law. Things got even more heated when the Belarusian Tennis Federation threatened legal action against Wimbledon, after it was charged of breaking the law, by banning Russian and Belarusian players from competitions. Andrei Rublev, the world number 8 from Russia, criticized the All England club's decision as complete discrimination, and said it wasn't just motivated by the invasion of Ukraine, but concerns about how it would seem if the Duchess of Cambridge had to give a trophy to a player from Russia or Belarus. He's the same guy who brought up a "No War Please" sign on camera at the Dubai Tennis Championship and called the entire debate illogical. Rublev went as far as to convince Wimbledon to ask Russian and Belarusian players to sign a statement, promising to give all the prize money to humanitarian help, in exchange for being allowed to compete. he's not the only one who feels discriminated against. A horrible incident happened with tennis star Vitalia Diachenko, who claimed that she was denied boarding on a Polish flag carrier lot flight in Cairo, and that German airline Lufthansa then declined to sell her a ticket too. She was attempting to go from Corsica, Spain via Warsaw and Nice for a competition. The player slammed the airlines on social media, revealing how she had to sleep on the airport like a third-class citizen. Yikes. But in the end, Wimbledon was more worried by the BTF threat, which claimed to be working with foreign law firms to protect its players. Notably, Victoria Azarenka, the two-time Grand Slam champion, and of course Aryna Sabalenka. Now, the ATP and WTA, which oversee the men's and women's tournaments, as well as numerous well-known tennis players, including Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal, Stefanos Tsitsipas, and Andy Murray, have all criticized Wimbledon's decision. Soon enough, the sporting body ate their own words and removed the ban. But there's a catch. Only if players from the two countries meet specific requirements that they'll be allowed to participate in the competitions in July. Among them include refraining from endorsing the invasion and refusing to accept government funds from their own countries. Adding to that, the All England Lawn Tennis Club, which oversees Wimbledon, said in a statement the competitors are also prohibited from receiving sponsorships from organizations that are run or controlled by the government. Well, this couldn't have been easy for them, but it had to be done. Because after they slammed strict sanctions last year, Wimbledon and the Lawn Tennis Association, the UK's national governing body for the sport, received severe penalties. Both organizations received fines, and Wimbledon even lost ranking points. Of course they were going to go back on their decisions. The tournament said that the conditions for this year were the result of discussions with the government and reiterated their support for Ukraine. By the way, it wasn't just verbal support. Nope. In collaboration with the LTA, they'll contribute £1 to Ukrainian aid for every ticket holder at the championships this year, totaling more than £500,000. They'll also collaborate with the British Red Cross, Merchant and Wandsworth Councils, and welcome 1,000 Ukrainian refugees to join for a day at Wimbledon, complete with tickets, refreshments, and transportation. And while that's great for Ukraine, things with Russia and Belarusian players remain salty. Following a courtside altercation in January of 2023, the Australian Open tennis tournament also banned the use of Russian and Belarusian flags. At first, the flags could be brought inside Melbourne Park by spectators as long as they didn't cause disruption. But on the day, after spectators waved a Russian flag during a match between Russian Kamila Rakimova and Ukrainian Katerina Bandel, the organizers changed their minds. So, during the Australian Open, athletes from the two countries competed under a neutral white flag. But now, fans can't even carry their flags to cheer on their players. The ban follows Ukrainian tennis star Marta Kostyuk's declaration that she won't shake hands with Russian and Belarusian opponents, because she feels they haven't done enough to denounce the invasion. Honestly, it makes sense why this alienation got to Aryna. But you know how she channeled it? Through her game. Yep, she came pumped to play against Iga. On May 6, Iga Swiatek was defeated by dialed-in Aryna Sabalenka, 6-3, 3-6, 6-3, to win the 2023 Mutua Madrid Open Women's title. But that's not all. It's her second championship in Madrid, third WTA championship of the year, fourth career victory over a number one player, fifth WTA 1000 champion, and 13th career WTA championship overall. Damn, girl. Plus, Sabalenka actually broke a three-way tie with Swiatek and Belinda Bencic, who have each won 2 WTA titles this year, to become the first woman to do so. The Polish player, who had won her previous 6 matches in straight sets, also lost her 6-match, 12-set winning streak in clay court finals to the 25-year-old. Talk about making a comeback and defying all odds. Their growing rivalry is a sight to see in court. Sabalenka is the only female player to have defeated Swiatek and Ashley Barty many times, while they were rated number 1 and number 2 respectively. She defeated top-seeded Swiatek in 2 hours and 26 minutes to win in Madrid for the second time in 3 years. In their 3 prior encounters on clay courts, Sabalenka had never defeated Swiatek, but her 2 Madrid victories have happened in the final by beating the current world number 1. Speaking about this feat, she admitted that it was about putting aside her self-confidence issues and realizing that she was outmatched by Swiatek in terms of strength. But to defeat Iga, she needed to be strong both mentally and physically, and that's exactly what she worked on to make this spectacular comeback. So, from making a satisfying record-breaking win against her biggest rival, Iga Swiatek, to the Belarusian player opening up about the hostilities she faced behind the screen, this was what Aryna Sabalenka had to say about all the hate she received.